I always believed my younger sister, Brielle, was just the harmless, golden child of our family, living the life I could never afford. So when she begged to take my 8-year-old son, Caleb, to Miami for a short vacation, I ignored the knot in my stomach and agreed. I thought I was giving him a few days of sunshine. I had no idea I was handing him over to a conspiracy designed to steal him from me forever. The alarm on my phone buzzed against the nightstand at exactly 6 in the morning. A vibrating summons that pulled me out of a dream I could not remember. I lay there for a moment in the gray light of dawn, listening to the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the rhythmic breathing of the old furnace. This was my life in Larkridge, a Midwestern city that felt like it was perpetually waiting for something to happen. I was 33 years old, and my days were measured in dosages of caffeine, completed checklists, and the precious, fleeting hours between work and sleep. I rolled out of bed, my feet hitting the cold laminate floor. The townhouse was quiet. It was a rental, a modest 2-bedroom unit in a complex called Whispering Pines. Though there were no pines, only a few stunted maples that turned a brilliant, desperate red in October. It was not the house I had grown up in, nor was it the house my parents wished I lived in, but it was ours, mine and Caleb's. I moved through the hallway, stepping over a stray Lego brick that had escaped the nightly cleanup. I pushed open Caleb's door. He was sprawled diagonally across his twin bed, one foot dangling off the edge, his duvet kicked into a heap on the floor. At 8 years old, he slept with the abandon of someone who knew they were completely safe. I paused, watching the rise and fall of his chest. A fierce protectiveness swelling in my throat. He was the only thing in my life that made total sense. "Wake up, Bug," I whispered, gently shaking his shoulder. "School day." He groaned, scrunching his nose. "5 more minutes. We have spelling words to review," I said, pulling the duvet up to cover his foot. And I think I bought the good bagels. One blue eye cracked open. "Blueberry?" I smiled. "The ones with the extra berries." By 6:45, the kitchen was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. I was packing his lunch, turkey sandwich, crust cut off, apple slices, no grapes, because he had decided last week that grapes were slimy, while simultaneously checking my work email on my phone. I was an administrative coordinator at St. Jude's Hospital, a title that sounded important but mostly meant I was the person everyone yelled at when the schedules were wrong or the supply closet was empty. "How do you spell ocean?" I asked, snapping the lid onto his lunchbox. Caleb took a massive bite of his bagel, purple smear on his cheek. "Ocean. Easy. Okay, smart guy. How about aquarium?" He chewed thoughtfully. Aquarium. Correct. He swallowed. "Mom, did you know that the Pacific Ocean is so big that all the continents could fit inside it? Like, if you smash them all together?" "I did not know that," I said, handing him a napkin. "Wipe your face. I want to see it," he said, his voice taking on that wistful, distant quality that always made my heart ache a little. The real big blue water, not the lake, the ocean. One day, I promised, the same promise I had made a dozen times before. "We will save up. We will go." He nodded, accepting this with the patience of a child who was used to waiting. I looked at him, his hair mussed, his eyes bright with dreams of salt water and coral reefs. And I felt a familiar pang of guilt. I was doing my best. I was taking online courses 2 nights a week to get my master's in healthcare administration. I was budgeting every dollar, but the gap between what I wanted to give him and what I could provide sometimes felt as wide as the ocean he talked about. The drive to school was quick, and the drop-off lane was the usual battlefield of SUVs and minivans. I watched him run toward the brick building, his backpack bouncing against his spine, and waited until he disappeared through the double doors before I pulled away. My day at the hospital was a blur of crises that were not really crises. A surgeon was screaming about a scheduling conflict. The printer in the billing department had jammed for the 3rd time. I mediated. I fixed. I apologized. By the time I clocked out at 4:30, my head was throbbing, and I still had 3 chapters of health economics to read for my class that night. But it was Friday, which meant the weekend was here. However, this weekend came with a caveat. Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I spent Saturday trying to recharge. We went to the park. We watched a documentary about sharks. We ordered pizza. I tried to build a fortress of calm around us, but the looming obligation of Sunday hung over me like a storm cloud. My parents, Leonard and Marcy Ross, lived in Crestview Hills, an upscale suburb 20 minutes away where the lawns were manicured to within an inch of their lives and the driveways were paved with cobblestones. It was the world I had left, and the world my sister, Brielle, had seamlessly embraced. On Sunday evening, I parked my 5-year-old sedan in their driveway, acutely aware of the oil stain it might leave on the pristine concrete. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. I always looked tired. I pinched my cheeks to add some color, took a deep breath, and turned to Caleb. "Game face, buddy," I said. He grinned. "Can I ask Grandma for extra dessert?" "Only if you eat your green beans." We went inside. The house smelled of lemon polish and expensive potpourri. My mother was in the kitchen, arranging hors d'oeuvres on a silver platter. She was 60, slim, and maintained with a rigorous schedule of Pilates and facials. "There you are," she said, not looking up from the cheese arrangement. "You are 10 minutes late. Ariana." Traffic was bad on the connector. I lied. It was never bad on Sunday. I just had not wanted to leave the sanctuary of my apartment. "Dad is in the den," she said. "Brielle and Chase are not here yet." Of course, I went to the den to greet my father. Leonard Ross was a man who believed in firm handshakes and firmer opinions. He was watching golf on a television that was larger than my dining table. "Hi, Dad," I said. He grunted, keeping his eyes on the screen. "Hello, Ariana. How is the job? Still pushing paper? I am an administrative coordinator." "Dad, it is a good job." He took a sip of his scotch. "If you say so. I saw Chase last week. He just closed a deal worth $2 million. Now that is a job." I kept my smile fixed, a porcelain mask I had perfected over 3 decades. "That is great for Chase." Caleb ran in, saving me. "Grandpa, do you have the golf cart?" My father's face softened instantly. "For you, kiddo? Maybe later." We moved to the dining room. The table was set with the good china, the kind I was terrified of breaking. We sat, the empty chairs for Brielle and Chase gaping like missing teeth. We waited. My mother did not serve dinner until Brielle arrived. 20 minutes later. The front door burst open. "So sorry." Brielle's voice carried through the hallway, breathless and charming. "We got caught up looking at photos." My sister swept into the room, bringing a gust of expensive perfume and frantic energy with her. She was 30, 3 years younger than me, but she looked like she belonged to a different species. Her hair was a glossy cascade of blonde waves. Her skin was tanned, and she was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly student loan payment. Chase, her husband, trailed behind her, looking typically handsome and vaguely bored. My parents lit up. The atmosphere in the room shifted from judgment to adoration instantly. "There she is," my father boomed. Brielle kissed my mother's cheek, then my father's, then gave me a quick, one-armed squeeze. "Hi, Ari, you look cozy." I looked down at my sweater. It was cotton. It was practical. "Hi, Brielle." Chase gave me a nod. "Ariana." We sat down, and my mother finally signaled for the roast to be carved. As the plates were passed, Brielle pulled out her phone. "You guys have to see the pictures from Cabo," she said, scrolling through her gallery. It was absolute paradise. Chase got us a private cabana. She passed the phone around. Photos of turquoise water, white sand, cocktails with umbrellas. Brielle in a white bikini looking like a model. My mother cooed over every image. "You look stunning." "Honey," my mother said, "just beautiful." "Ariana, look at the water," my father said, nudging me. "You should get out more. See the world. I travel. I said defensively, cutting Caleb's meat for him. We went to the state park last month. My mother let out a short, sharp laugh. The state park. Ariana. Really? That is hardly seeing the world. I focused on my plate. The food tasted like ash. Brielle leaned back in her chair, holding her wineglass by the stem. Actually, that gives me an idea. She looked around the table, her eyes landing on Caleb, who was busy building a dam out of mashed potatoes. I have some downtime coming up before the spring gala season kicks into high gear, Brielle said, and Chase has to travel for business next week to New York. So I was thinking, why don't I take Caleb to Miami for a few days? The fork paused halfway to my mouth. Excuse me? Just us, Brielle continued, her smile widening. A special aunt and nephew trip. It will be so much fun. He can see the ocean. The real ocean, Ari. Not the state park lake. My stomach dropped. The immediate, physical reaction was visceral. A tightening in my chest, a cold prickle at the back of my neck. I don't know. I said, my voice tight. He has school. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Oh, missing 3 days of second grade will not kill him. He is smart. He will catch up. It is a great idea, my father added, nodding. The boy needs some culture, needs to see how the other half lives. I looked at Brielle. She was beaming, waiting for my gratitude. Brielle, that is very generous, I said, trying to keep my tone even. But he has never been away from me overnight, not without family nearby. Florida is a plane ride away. You act like I'm taking him to Mars. Brielle laughed. It is a 2-hour flight. I travel all the time. I know what I'm doing. I know you travel. I said, but traveling with an 8-year-old is different. He has allergies. He has a routine. My mother sighed loudly, setting her fork down with a clatter. Oh, Ariana. Do not be so overprotective. It is unbecoming. I am not being overprotective, I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. I am being a mother. You are being dramatic, my mother corrected. Brielle is offering to do something wonderful for your son, something you cannot do for him right now. You should be thanking her, not making excuses. The words stung, precise and targeted. Something you cannot do for him. It was the subtext of every conversation we had ever held. Chase chimed in, leaning forward. We have plenty of miles. The flight would be free. We would stay at the resort I stayed at last year. 5 stars. Very safe. I looked at Caleb. He had stopped eating and was looking back and forth between us, his eyes wide. Ariana, my father said, his voice dropping to that authoritative register he used when he wanted to end an argument. Let the boy go. It will be good for him. Stop holding him back because of your own anxieties. I felt cornered. The walls of the dining room seemed to be inching closer. I looked at Brielle, silently pleading with her to drop it, to understand that this was too much, too fast. Instead, Brielle stood up and walked around the table. She knelt down next to Caleb's chair, bringing her face level with his. Caleb, buddy, she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. Do you want to go on an adventure with Aunt Brielle? Brielle, please, I started. Do you want to fly on a big airplane? She asked him, ignoring me. Do you want to go to the beach and see dolphins? We can eat ice cream every single day. What do you say? Caleb's face transformed. The caution vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated joy. Real dolphins? He whispered. Real wild ones. Brielle promised. Swimming right next to us. Yes, Caleb shouted, bouncing in his chair. Yes, 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 Mom, can I go? Please, please. He looked at me with those big, hopeful eyes, and I knew I had lost. If I said no now, I was the villain. I was the mean mother who hated dolphins and ice cream. I was the barrier to his happiness. Brielle looked up at me, a smug satisfaction tucked into the corner of her smile. See? He wants to go. Don't let your anxiety hold him back. Ari, I looked around the table. My parents were nodding in approval. Caleb was vibrating with excitement. Brielle was the hero. I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "We will talk about it," I said. The rest of the dinner was a blur of Caleb asking questions about sharks and airplanes, and my parents praising Brielle's generosity. I said nothing. I just pushed the cold roast beef around my plate and tried to breathe. The next day at the hospital, I felt like I was moving through water. The anxiety had settled into my bones, a heavy, dull ache. At noon, I found Tessa in the break room. Tessa was a nurse in the pediatric unit, a woman with a laugh that could shatter glass and a no-nonsense attitude that I relied on for survival. She was stirring sugar into a cup of coffee that looked more like sludge. "You look like you have seen a ghost," Tessa said, leaning against the counter. "What happened? Sunday dinner?" "Worse," I said, sinking into a plastic chair. "Brielle wants to take Caleb to Miami." Tessa whistled low. "Miami? Fancy. When?" "This week. She just sprung it on me. And of course, Mom and Dad took her side immediately. They made me feel like a monster for even hesitating." Tessa took a sip of her coffee and grimaced. "Okay, let us play devil's advocate for a second. Is Brielle responsible?" I hesitated. She is Brielle. She manages her life fine. She has never lost anything valuable, but she has never taken care of a kid for 24 hours straight. "It is just a few days, right?" Tessa asked. 4 days, I said, Thursday to Sunday. Tessa sat down opposite me. "Look, Ari, I know your sister drives you crazy, and I know your parents are, well, them. But maybe this is a good thing?" "How?" I asked, rubbing my temples. "You are exhausted," Tessa said gently. "I see you checking your phone every 5 minutes. I see the way you rub your chest when you are stressed. You are running on fumes. Honey, school, work, Caleb, you never take a break. I can't take a break." I said, "If I stop, everything falls apart." "That is the anxiety talking," Tessa said. "If Caleb goes with his rich aunt to a nice resort for 4 days, he is going to have a blast. And you? You could sleep. You could study without interruption. You could take a bath that lasts longer than 10 minutes. I looked at her. It sounded seductive. The idea of 4 days of silence. "But what if something happens?" I asked. "He is 8, Tessa said. "He is not a baby. And Brielle is family. She loves him, right?" "She does," I admitted. "She dotes on him." "Then trust your gut," Tessa said. "But make sure your gut isn't just reacting to your mother's voice in your head. Is it real danger, or is it just fear of letting go?" I sat there, listening to the hum of the vending machine. Tessa was right. I was tired, so incredibly tired. And maybe, just maybe, I was letting my resentment of Brielle cloud my judgment. Maybe she really just wanted to be a good aunt. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Brielle's contact name. "Trust your instincts," Tessa said, watching me. "But don't assume the worst just because it is easier." I took a deep breath and typed, "If I say yes, I need details. Flights, hotel, itinerary, everything." The response came 3 minutes later. It was a barrage of screenshots. First-class tickets on American Airlines, a confirmation number for a suite at the Royal Palm Resort, a picture of Brielle smiling, holding a thumbs up. "See? All handled." The text read, "I promise I will update you constantly. You need a break. Ari, let me be the fun aunt for once. Please." I stared at the phone. The flight left Thursday morning. Return flight Sunday evening. It was all there. Legitimate. Real. I felt a crack in my resolve. Caleb's face when he talked about the dolphins. My own exhaustion dragging at my eyelids. "Okay," I typed, "but I have conditions." "Name them," she replied instantly. "Return in 4 days. No extensions. Frequent FaceTime calls. Morning and night. No risky excursions. SPF 50. Sunscreen at all times." I hit send and immediately followed up with a PDF document I kept on my phone titled Caleb_medical_routine. It listed his mild allergy to penicillin, his bedtime, the way he liked his pillows arranged. Brielle responded with 3 laughing, crying emojis. "OMG Ari," she wrote. "You are treating a simple trip like a NASA launch. Relax, we will be fine." The comment stung. NASA launch. It was the same dismissal my mother used, overprotective, dramatic, but I swallowed the anger. I was doing this for Caleb. Just promise me. I wrote back. I promise. Cross my heart. I set the phone down on the break room table. My hands were trembling slightly. You did it? Tessa asked. I did it, I said, though the words tasted like lead. He is going to Miami. The days leading up to the trip passed in a blur of preparation. I washed every piece of clothing Caleb owned. I bought a new bottle of sunscreen. I packed a first aid kit that could have serviced a small field hospital. Caleb was in heaven. He told everyone he met, the cashier at the grocery store, the mailman, his teacher, that he was going to Miami to see the dolphins. His joy was infectious, and it helped chip away at the block of dread sitting in my stomach. Wednesday night arrived, the night before the departure. I stood in Caleb's room. He was already asleep, exhausted from the sheer anticipation. His suitcase lay open on the floor. It was a small, rolling suitcase with a cartoon shark on the front. I knelt down and began folding his t-shirts. I smoothed out the wrinkles in his favorite blue shirt, the one with the dinosaur on it. I packed his swim trunks, 3 pairs, just in case. I packed his toothbrush, his special toothpaste, his noise-canceling headphones for the plane. The house was silent. The wind rattled the window pane slightly. It was a lonely sound. I stood up and looked around his room, the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, the drawings taped to the wall. It was his sanctuary, and I was sending him away from it. I walked to the kitchen and opened my laptop. I pulled up the email Brielle had forwarded. The flight confirmation. Departing. Larkridge Regional, LKR. Arriving, Miami International, MIA. Returning, Sunday, October 14th. I stared at the dates. Thursday to Sunday, 4 days, 96 hours. I felt a mix of pride. I was giving him this. I was letting him have the big life, the ocean life. Even if I couldn't be the one to take him, I was stepping back, letting go of my control, just like everyone said I should. But beneath the pride, the dread was still there. It was nameless and shapeless, a cold current running beneath the surface of my logic. I read the confirmation number again. I checked the flight status. On time. Everything was fine. I closed the laptop, the screen going black. I stood in the dark kitchen, listening to the silence of the townhouse. Tomorrow morning, I would drive them to the airport. I would kiss my son goodbye. I would let him go. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering despite the heat kicking on. It will be fine, I whispered to the empty room. It will be so much fun. I just wished I could believe it. Larkridge Regional Airport was a small, echoing building that smelled perpetually of floor wax and stale coffee. It was not a place of glamour. It was a place where tired people waited for connector flights to Chicago or Atlanta. But on that Thursday morning, to my 8-year-old son, it might as well have been the launch pad for a rocket ship. Caleb was vibrating. There was no other word for it. He was wearing his favorite shark t-shirt and the new sneakers I had bought him for school, and he was practically bouncing off the balls of his feet as we stood in the check-in line. Mom, do they have movies on the plane? He asked for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Yes, baby, I said, smoothing his hair down, though it immediately popped back up. But it is a short flight to the connection, so you might not finish one, he gasped, turning to Brielle. Aunt Brielle, can I watch a movie about aliens? Brielle smiled down at him. She looked like she had stepped out of a magazine ad for luxury travel. She was wearing cream-colored cashmere trousers and a matching wrap. Her luggage was a sleek, hard-shell set that glided silently across the linoleum, and her sunglasses were perched perfectly atop her head. She looked expensive. She looked capable. We can watch whatever you want, she told him, winking. I downloaded 3 movies on my iPad just for you. I stood there clutching a manila envelope that contained everything I could think of. Copies of Caleb's insurance card, a list of emergency contacts, a typed sheet with his pediatrician's number. I felt like I was holding onto a lifeline that was rapidly fraying. Did you pack the inhaler? I asked Brielle, my voice tight. Yes. Ari, she said, not looking at me as she checked her reflection in her phone screen. In the carry-on, front pocket, and the sunscreen? The zinc one, not the spray? She sighed, a long, exasperated sound that made the woman behind us in line glance over. Yes, it is all there. You watched me pack it, remember? I took a deep breath. I was doing it again. I was being the frantic, hovering mother. I forced my shoulders to drop an inch. I just want you guys to be safe, I said quietly. Brielle softened. Just for a second. She reached out and squeezed my arm, her manicured nails digging slightly into my sweater. We will be fine, she said. He is going to have the time of his life. You are the one who needs to relax. Go home, take a bath, read a book. We reached the security checkpoint. This was the line, the physical boundary I could not cross. Okay, bug, I said, crouching down to Caleb's level. I ignored the dirty airport floor. I ignored the people shuffling past us. I looked into his blue eyes, so wide and full of trust. You be good for Aunt Brielle, okay? Listen to her. Hold her hand in the parking lot. I will. Mom, he said, barely listening, his eyes already tracking the TSA agents. And call me, I said, grabbing his hands. Call me first thing when you land. Promise? Promise, he chirped. He leaned forward and gave me a quick, hard hug, his arms squeezing my neck. He smelled of strawberry shampoo and the faint, dusty scent of the playground. I held him for a second longer than he wanted, closing my eyes, memorizing the weight of him against me. Okay, I whispered, letting go. Go get him. Brielle took his hand. Come on, adventurer. Let's go find the lounge. She flashed me one last brilliant smile, grabbed her carry-on, and turned toward the conveyor belts. I stood behind the retractable ribbon barrier, watching them. Caleb looked so small next to her. He dragged his little shark suitcase, looking back once to wave. I waved back, smiling until my face hurt, keeping the tears locked tight in my throat. I watched until they turned the corner and disappeared behind the metal detectors. Then, and only then, did I let the smile drop. I felt a sudden, hollow ache in the center of my chest, as if a vital organ had been scooped out. I turned around and walked back toward the automatic doors, the airport suddenly feeling very large and very empty. The drive back to the townhouse was silent. I did not turn on the radio. I needed to hear the silence, to acclimate to it. When I walked inside, the house felt different. It was cleaner, stiller. Caleb's breakfast plate was still on the table. A few crumbs of toast scattered on the placemat. I cleaned the kitchen with a ferocity that bordered on mania. I scrubbed the counters. I mopped the floor. I organized the spice rack. Every 5 minutes, I checked my phone. Nothing. 10 minutes. Nothing. My mind began to construct scenarios. The plane had mechanical issues. They had gotten lost in the terminal. Caleb had an allergic reaction to a peanut someone was eating in row 12. I sat on the sofa, staring at the black screen of my phone. Safe? I texted. No reply. 5 minutes later. Landed? No reply. My chest tightened. I stood up and paced the length of the living room. 7 steps to the window. 7 steps back. I was about to call the airline when my phone finally pinged. I lunged for it. It was a photo. A selfie taken inside the plane cabin. Brielle was making a duck face, her sunglasses on. Caleb was next to her, grinning so hard his eyes were squinted shut, holding up a bag of pretzels. Caption: We have arrived. Calm down, Mama Bear. Baggage claim is slow. I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. I sank back onto the sofa, the tension draining out of me so fast it left me dizzy. They were there. They were safe. 10 minutes later, another photo, Caleb standing in front of a giant, colorful mural in the Miami airport that said, "Welcome to Paradise." He looked tiny against the vibrant colors. Then, my phone rang. FaceTime. I answered instantly. Mom! Caleb's face filled the screen. The connection was a little pixelated, but I could see the palm trees in the background through a glass window. Hi, baby, I said, my voice rising an octave. You made it. It is so hot. he shouted, though he was holding the phone 6 inches from his face. And the airport has a train inside it. A real train. That is amazing, I said, drinking in the sight of him. Are you tired? No, he insisted, rubbing his eye with a fist. I want to go to the pool. Brielle's face appeared over his shoulder. She looked fresh, not a hair out of place. We are grabbing a cab now, she said. I will text you when we get to the hotel. We are going to grab some food and then crash. It has been a long day. Okay, I said. Love you. Bug. Be good. Love you, Caleb said. And the screen went black. I put the phone down on the coffee table. The house was still quiet, but the silence felt less threatening now. It felt like permission. I heated up a frozen dinner, opened a bottle of wine that had been sitting in my fridge for 3 months, and sat in the living room. For the first time in 8 years, I did not have to oversee a bedtime routine. I did not have to check for monsters under the bed. I simply sat. Maybe Tessa was right. I thought, taking a sip of wine, maybe I did need this. The next 2 days were a digital montage of happiness. Friday morning. I woke up to a video. It was Caleb, standing on a pristine white beach, the ocean stretching out behind him in an impossible gradient of turquoise and sapphire. He was holding a shell the size of a dinner plate. Look, Mom, he yelled over the sound of the wind. A conch, a real conch. I watched it 5 times. I saved it to my favorites throughout the day. While I was at work, my phone buzzed with updates. Photo: Caleb eating a pancake that was literally larger than his head, covered in whipped cream. Photo: Caleb buried in sand up to his neck, only his head sticking out, wearing his sunglasses. Video: Caleb splashing in the shallow end of a pool that looked like something out of a movie, complete with waterfalls and rock formations. Brielle was in the background, lounging on a chaise, waving a perfectly manicured hand at the camera. I showed Tessa the photos during our lunch break. See? Tessa said, pointing a fry at my screen. Look at that smile. He is having a blast. And look at your shoulders. They are not touching your ears for once. I laughed. It is weird. I keep waking up thinking I need to make school lunch. Enjoy it, Tessa said. Sunday will be here before you know it. Friday night, we FaceTimed again. Caleb was in pajamas, his skin slightly pink from the sun, his hair wet from a shower. He looked exhausted but happy. Did you wear the sunscreen? I asked. Yes, Mom, he groaned. Aunt Brielle put on like 100 layers. I looked like a ghost. Brielle laughed from off-screen. I took the phone and turned the camera to herself. She was wearing a silk robe, holding a glass of white wine. We are taking good care of him. Ari, she said, he is a natural. Honestly, I might just keep him. I'm going to steal him. She laughed, a bright tinkling sound. I laughed too. Don't you dare. I know where you live. Seriously, though, she said, her expression shifting slightly. He seems really happy here, relaxed. It is good for him to be out of that townhouse. The comment pricked me, that townhouse, but I let it slide. It was Brielle. She did not know how to give a compliment without wrapping it in a criticism. We are having fun, she said. Go to sleep. Ari? I hung up, feeling a warm glow. They were bonding, my sister and my son. It was what I had always wanted. Deep down, for Caleb to have more family, for us not to be so alone against the world. Saturday passed in much the same way. More photos, a video of them visiting a sea turtle rescue center. Caleb's face pressed against the glass of a tank, his expression rapturous. I spent the day studying. I finished 3 assignments. I cleaned the bathroom. I felt productive. I felt calm. Then came Saturday evening. Our scheduled FaceTime was for 7 o'clock. At 6:55, I was sitting at the kitchen table, phone propped up against the salt shaker, waiting. 7 o'clock came and went. 7:15, I tapped the table. They were probably just running late. Dinner service was slow. They were stuck in traffic. At 7:30, I sent a text. Everything okay? Ready when you guys are. No response. I waited. The silence in the house. which had felt luxurious the night before, suddenly felt heavy. It pressed against my ears. At 8 o'clock, I called. It rang and rang and rang, then went to voicemail. "Hi, this is Brielle. Leave a message." I hung up. I did not want to leave a frantic message. I did not want to be the crazy mother. I checked the weather in Miami. Clear skies, 80 degrees, no storms. At 8:45, my phone buzzed. I snatched it up. It was a text from Brielle. "So sorry. Dinner ran late, and we are still out walking on the boardwalk. Loud here. Call you in a bit?" I let out a breath. "Okay," I typed back. "Just want to say goodnight to him. Will do." I waited. 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock. I walked around the townhouse, turning lights on and off. Why were they out so late? Caleb's bedtime was 8:30. He would be exhausted. At 10:30, I called again. Voicemail. At 11. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, my stomach churning. This was the shift, the subtle alteration in the pattern. Finally, at 11:45, nearly midnight, my phone chimed. "So sorry. He literally fell asleep on me in the cab. Dead to the world. Exhausted from the sun. I don't want to wake him. Call tomorrow morning?" I stared at the words. Dead to the world. I hated that phrase. "Okay." I typed. My fingers stiff. "Kiss him for me. Have him call me as soon as he wakes up. Will do. Night, Ari." I put the phone on the nightstand. I lay down in the dark, but sleep was a distant country. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the text in my head. Still out. Fell asleep. It was fine. It was vacation. Kids stayed up late on vacation, but the knot in my stomach was back, tighter than before. Sunday morning, the day of return. I woke up at 5, unable to sleep any longer. I reached for my phone immediately. No texts. I got out of bed and made coffee. I pulled up the American Airlines app on my phone. I like to track the incoming flight, to know exactly when the plane left the tarmac in Miami. I was obsessive like that. I opened the app and tapped on the Trips tab. It refreshed, a little spinning wheel. Then, the screen settled. No upcoming trips. I frowned. That was wrong. I had the confirmation number. I had seen it there on Thursday. I refreshed it again. No upcoming trips. A cold prickle started at the base of my spine. I typed in the record locator manually. Maybe it was a glitch. Apps crashed all the time. I entered the 6-character code, J7K9L2. The screen loaded. Flight A2458 from MIA to LKR. Status, cancelled. I stared at the word. Cancelled? I tapped for details. This reservation has been modified. Please contact reservations. My heart hammered against my ribs. Modified? By who? I pressed the button to call the airline. The automated voice made me punch in numbers. Say representative. Wait on hold for generic jazz music that sounded like a funeral dirge. Finally, a human voice. American Airlines. "This is Sarah." "Hi," I said, my voice trembling. "I am looking at a reservation. J. 7K9L2. It says it is cancelled?" "One moment. Ma'am." The typing sound on the other end was like gunfire. "Ah, yes," the agent said. "I see here that the itinerary was changed yesterday evening." "Changed?" I asked. "Changed to what?" "The passengers have been rebooked for Wednesday, October 17th, Flight A4490. Wednesday? I gripped the edge of the counter. That can't be right. They are supposed to fly today. Who changed it?" The typing stopped. It looks like the change was made online by the passenger. The ticket was reissued. "By the passenger? You mean Brielle Ross?" "Yes, ma'am. That is the name on the account." I hung up. I did not say goodbye. I just lowered the phone. My hand shaking so hard I almost dropped it. Wednesday. 3 more days. Without asking me, without telling me, I dialed Brielle. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Hello?" Her voice was bright, breezy. I could hear the sound of wind whipping against the microphone and the distant crash of waves. "Brielle," I said, my voice low and dangerous. Why did the airline just tell me you moved the flight to Wednesday? There was a pause, a beat of silence masked by the wind. Oh, you saw that? Brielle said. Her tone was casual, maddeningly unconcerned. I was going to call you this morning. Why did you change the ticket? I demanded. We had a deal. Sunday. Today is Sunday. Ari, relax, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. We are having so much fun. Caleb was literally crying last night because he didn't want to leave. I couldn't drag him to the airport today. It would have been cruel. Cruel? I shouted. Brielle, he has school. I have work. You cannot just extend a trip without asking his mother. I did extend it, she said. I paid the change fee and everything. Consider it a gift. A gift? This is not a gift. This is kidnapping. Whoa, Brielle said, her voice turning sharp. Stop. Do not use words like that. That is crazy. Ari, I am his aunt. I am giving him a few more days of sunshine. You should be thanking me. I am not thanking you. I want you on a plane today. I want my son home. Ariana, listen to yourself, she said, her voice dropping to a condescending soothe. You are spiraling. You are letting your anxiety ruin this. Think about Caleb. He is happy here. He is playing in the sand right now. Do you really want to drag him back to that gloomy townhouse and school just because you need to control everything? It is not about control, I yelled. It is about the agreement. You technically agreed to let me take him, she countered. And plans change. That is what normal people do. Ari, they go with the flow. Stop being so controlling. It is ugly. Put Caleb on the phone. I said, he is in the water. She said, I am not running into the ocean with my phone. Get him out of the water. No, she said simply. I am not going to ruin his morning because you are having a panic attack. Enjoy a few more kid-free days. Go on a date. Do something with your life other than obsess over us. Brielle, we will see you Wednesday, she said. And then she hung up. I stared at the phone. The screen went black. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, gasping for air. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated entitlement. She had changed the ticket. She had decided that my rules, my schedule, my custody did not matter. I dialed her back instantly, straight to voicemail. She had turned her phone off. I paced the kitchen. I felt like a trapped animal. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? My sister took my son on a vacation I agreed to, but she changed the return ticket by 3 days. They would laugh at me. It was a civil matter, a family squabble. I went to work because I did not know what else to do. I sat at my desk at the hospital, staring at a spreadsheet of inventory, the numbers swimming before my eyes. At 4 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. Marcy. Brielle just called me. She is upset. I typed back, my fingers flying. She is upset? She kidnapped my son. She changed the ticket without asking me. My phone rang instantly. It was my mother, Ariana Marie Ross. My mother's voice was ice cold. You need to stop this immediately. Stop what? I hissed, ducking into the supply closet for privacy. Stop wanting my child back? Stop overreacting, my mother snapped. Any other mother would be on her knees with gratitude that her sister took her kid on a luxury vacation. Brielle is spending thousands of dollars on him, and you are screaming at her about school attendance? He is missing a week of school now. Mom, that matters. It is 2nd grade, my mother yelled. He is not missing medical school entrance exams. He is learning about the world. He is with family. She lied to me. I said, tears stinging my eyes. She changed the plan behind my back. She made an executive decision because she knew you would be irrational. My mother said, and look, she was right. You are being irrational. You are making Brielle feel guilty for loving her nephew. I am not. I started, but the shame hit me. Familiar and suffocating. Was I? Was I being irrational? Was I ruining it? Stop it, my mother said firmly. Let them stay until Wednesday. Do not call her screaming again. If you ruin this trip for Caleb, I will never forgive you. The line clicked dead. I stood in the smell of bleach and gauze. leaning my forehead against the metal shelving unit. I felt small. I felt crazy. My entire family was telling me that up was down and black was white. That evening, back at the quiet townhouse, I sat on the couch with my laptop. I opened Facebook. I needed to see him. I needed proof he was okay. I went to Brielle's profile. She had posted an hour ago. It was a group photo. Brielle, Caleb, and a couple I did not recognize. They were sitting at a fancy outdoor restaurant at sunset. Caleb was smiling, but he looked tired. His eyes were a little puffy. The caption read, "Sunset dinner with the best crew. Feeling so at home here. The vibe is just different. Miami life family, never leaving." I scrolled to the comments. My mother had commented, "Beautiful. So glad you are extending the fun." Chase, Brielle's husband, had commented, "Looks great." Then I saw a comment from someone named Jessica V., one of Brielle's Miami friends. "OMG, he is adorable. He already looks like a little local." Brielle had replied to her, "Right? Wish we could keep this one forever. Wink emoji." My stomach dropped. It felt like the elevator cable had snapped. "Wish we could keep this one forever. Feeling at home here. He looks like a little local." It wasn't just a caption, it was a narrative. They were building a story where Caleb belonged there, where he was theirs. I closed the laptop shut. My heart was racing, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for Caleb's school. It was Sunday night, so I got the attendant's voicemail. "Hi, this is Ariana Ross. Caleb Ross's mother," I said, my voice shaking uncontrollably. I need to report him out sick for the next few days. He has a fever." I hung up. I had lied. I was covering for them. I was complicit in my own erasure. I opened the laptop again. I opened a private browser window. My fingers hovered over the keys. I felt paranoid. I felt like the crazy woman my mother said I was. But I typed it anyway. Temporary custody. Florida laws. I hit enter. The search results flooded the screen. Chapter 751. Temporary custody of minor children by extended family. Petition for temporary custody. I read the first line. Extended family members may petition for temporary custody if the parents are unfit or if the parent has consented. I stopped reading. I shook my head, squeezing my eyes shut. "You are crazy." I told myself, "It is just a vacation. They are your family. They would not do that." But I could not close the browser tab. The blue light of the screen illuminated the dark living room, casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. I sat there, staring at the legal code, while the silence of the empty house screamed at me. The days between Sunday and Wednesday felt like walking through a thick, invisible gel. Time distorted. Hours dragged while my anxiety raced. Larkridge was gray and damp, a stark contrast to the blindingly bright photos that continued to ping onto my phone screen, though with decreasing frequency. Monday passed with only 2 texts from Brielle. "Busy beach day. Dinner at a crab shack. Hands too messy to type." I replied instantly. Desperate, pathetic in my eagerness. "Have fun. Send a pic of Caleb? Just want to hear his voice." The response came 4 hours later. A blurry photo of Caleb holding a plastic shovel, looking away from the camera. No caption. Tuesday was worse. I tried to FaceTime at our usual time, right before his bedtime. The call rang and rang, the digital trill echoing in my empty kitchen. Finally, it connected, but the screen was dark and shaky. "Hey, Ari!" Brielle's voice was loud, competing with the thrum of a live band in the background. "Where is he?" I asked, gripping the phone. "It is 8:30. He is right here," she said. The camera swooped dizzily to show Caleb sitting at a high-top table, drawing on a paper placemat with crayons. He looked tired, his eyelids heavy, a half-eaten burger in front of him. "Hi, Mom," he said, barely looking up. "Hi, baby," I said, pressing my face closer to the screen. "Are you okay? You look sleepy." "He is fine," Brielle interrupted, pulling the camera back to her own face. She was flushed, her eyes bright, a tropical drink in her hand. We are just listening to some music. He loves the drummer. I want him in bed. Brielle, I said, trying to keep my voice level. We talked about this. He needs rest. You are breaking up, she shouted over a sudden crash of cymbals. Talk tomorrow. The screen went black. I stared at my reflection in the dark glass. I felt severed from him. My influence, my rules, my protection, they were all evaporating, replaced by Brielle's chaotic, glittering orbit. Wednesday arrived. The day they were supposed to come back, according to the modified itinerary, but I had not received a flight confirmation. I had not received a check-in notice. Instead, I received a text from my mother. Dinner tonight at our house, 6 o'clock. Dad wants to discuss some things. I typed back, are they back? Is Caleb coming? Just come for dinner. Ariana, was the reply. I drove to Crestview Hills with a pit in my stomach that felt like swallowed lead. The leaves on the trees were turning brown, trembling in the cold wind, but in my mind, I kept seeing palm trees. My parents' house was warm, too warm. The heat was cranked up to 75 degrees. My father, Leonard, was sitting in his leather armchair, reading a financial newspaper. My mother, Marcy, was stirring something on the stove that smelled of heavy cream and sherry. Where are they? I asked, not bothering with a greeting. Did they land? My father lowered the paper. He took off his reading glasses and folded them deliberately. Sit down. Ariana, he said, get yourself a drink. You look wound tight. I do not want a drink, I said, standing in the doorway of the den. I want to know where my son is. Is he at the airport? Is Brielle bringing him here? My mother walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a tea towel. They are still in Miami, she said casually, as if remarking on the weather. Brielle called. Caleb was having a little sinus trouble. She didn't want to put him on a plane with the pressure changes. Sinus trouble? I felt the blood drain from my face. Why didn't she tell me? I am his mother. She didn't want you to panic, my mother said, sighing. You know how you get. I get worried when my child is sick in another state. I snapped. I am calling her. I pulled out my phone, but my father stood up. His presence filled the room. A heavy, authoritative mass. Put the phone away. Ariana, he commanded. They are fine. In fact, I was just saying to your mother, it is good he's getting used to the warmth down there. Getting used to it? I repeated, the phrasing striking me as odd. It is a vacation. Dad, not a deployment. Kids thrive in Florida, my father continued, ignoring me. The air is better. The lifestyle is more active. None of this sitting inside watching television because it is raining. I looked between them. There was a strange energy in the room, a vibration of shared knowledge that I was not privy to. And the schools, my mother added, picking up a crystal bowl of nuts and setting it on the coffee table. Brielle was telling me about the private academy near her condo, top-tier, bilingual programs, sailing team, much better than whatever you have in Larkridge. I narrowed my eyes. Whatever I have in Larkridge? He goes to a perfectly good public school. He has friends there. He is happy. My mother made a face, a small scrunch of her nose that indicated distaste. Larkridge is fine. For now, but you have to think about his future. Ariana, the connections he makes, the environment. I felt a sudden, sharp need to get out of the room. The conversation felt scripted, like they were rehearsing lines from a play I hadn't read. I need to use the restroom. I said. I walked down the hallway, past the formal living room with its white furniture that no one was allowed to sit on. Instead of going to the bathroom, I slipped into my father's home office. I needed to breathe. I needed a moment of silence to calibrate my radar, because every alarm bell in my head was ringing. The office smelled of mahogany and old paper. I leaned against the door, closing my eyes, paranoid. I told myself, you are being paranoid. I opened my eyes. I walked over to the desk. Intending to just sit in the chair for a moment, that was when I saw it, lying on top of a stack of mail. Right next to the printer was a manila folder. It was open. The label on the tab read, Sunrise Harbor Trust. I frowned. I had never heard of it. but right below the title, typed on the label in smaller font, was a name. Beneficiary, Caleb Michael Ross. My heart stopped. I reached out, my hand trembling, and flipped the cover open. It was a legal document, dense, single-spaced text. I scanned the first page, my eyes catching on phrases: revocable trust, asset, Unit 404, The Palms at Key Biscayne, condition of disbursement. I turned the page. There was a printed email stapled to the back of the document. It was from a lawyer named Gerald S. Finch, based in Miami. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Ross, per our discussion, the activation of the Sunrise Harbor Trust and the transfer of the title for the condo requires the beneficiary to meet the residency requirement as stipulated by the late Mr. Arthur Ross. Specifically, the minor's primary residence must be established in the state of Florida for a minimum of 6 consecutive months prior to his 10th birthday. Once residency is proven via school enrollment and guardianship affidavit, the property will be transferred into the trust for his benefit, with the designated family guardian acting as trustee. I read the paragraph twice, 3 times. The room seemed to tilt. Arthur Ross, my uncle, my father's brother who had died 5 years ago. He had been a wealthy, eccentric man who had never married. I knew he had left money to the family, but I had never seen the details. I had been estranged from him in his final years because I refused to attend a family reunion where he had insulted my then-husband. Owen, designated family guardian, primary residence established in Florida. I looked at the date on the email. It was from 2 weeks ago. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the desk. This was not a vacation. This was an extraction. Ariana? My mother's voice came from the hallway. I grabbed the folder. I didn't care anymore. I marched out of the office, the papers crinkling in my fist, and walked straight into the kitchen where my parents were sitting at the breakfast nook. What is this? I demanded, slamming the folder down on the granite island. My mother jumped. My father looked at the folder, then at me, his expression hardening. You were snooping, he said. I was looking for a return label and I found my son's name on a legal document. I shouted, What is the Sunrise Harbor Trust? Why does it say Caleb has to live in Florida? My mother looked at my father, panic flitting across her eyes. Leonard, she whispered. My father sighed, taking a sip of his scotch. He did not look ashamed. He looked annoyed that he had been caught before he was ready. Sit down. Ariana, he said again, I am not sitting down. Tell me what this is. It is your Uncle Arthur's legacy, my father said, his voice steady. He bought a condo in Key Biscayne 20 years ago, before he died. He put it in a trust. He wanted it to go to the first grandchild who settled in Florida. He loved that state. He wanted his family to have a foothold there. And you never told me? I asked, my voice shaking. Caleb is the only grandchild. You knew this for 5 years and never told me? Arthur was specific. My mother interceded, her voice shrill. He was angry with you. Ariana, after the argument about Owen, he wrote the trust so that the parents of the child, you, could not control the asset directly. We didn't want to upset you with the details. It was complicated legal stuff. So you just decided to move my son to Florida behind my back? I asked, incredulous. To get a condo? It is $1 million property, my father barked, slamming his hand on the table. Paid off. Do you have any idea what that kind of asset would do for Caleb's future? It is passive income. It is security. Something you, with your hospital job and your rental apartment, cannot provide. The cruelty of his words took my breath away. So that is what this is? I whispered. Brielle takes him on a fun trip. And then what? She just keeps him? It is not keeping him, my mother said, leaning forward, her eyes pleading. It is establishing residency, just for 6 months. Brielle is happy to do it. She has the room. She has the time. Caleb would go to that beautiful school. He would live on the beach. And at the end of it, he owns a home, a future. And where am I in this plan? I asked, tears streaming down my face. Where is his mother? You can visit, my mother said brightly. Brielle said you could come down every other weekend. We would pay for the flights. It is just a temporary arrangement to secure the asset. You are insane, I said, backing away from them. Both of you. You think you can just swap out a child's life for real estate? He is my son. He is not a chess piece. We are thinking about the family, my father shouted. Standing up, we are thinking about what is best for him. Brielle can give him a life you can't. Look at her. She is successful. She is stable. She is married to a man who makes more in a month than you make in a year. You are being selfish. Ariana, you are letting your pride stand in the way of your son's inheritance. Selfish? I choked out a laugh. I am the one raising him. I am the one who wipes his nose and helps him with homework and holds him when he cries. Brielle just wants a doll to play with. Brielle loves him, my mother said, and she needs this too. You know how hard she has tried to have a baby. This helps everyone. I stared at them. I saw them clearly for the first time. They were not just critical parents. They were architects of a reality where I did not matter, where my motherhood was a biological inconvenience that could be circumvented with enough money and legal maneuvering. I am going home, I said, my voice low and trembling, and I am calling the police if Caleb is not on a plane tomorrow. You will do no such thing, my father warned. You will not embarrass this family. Watch me, I said. I turned and ran out of the house. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove. I drove blindly, tears blurring the road, until I reached the safety of my dark, empty townhouse. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, surrounded by the silence of the home that was supposed to be Caleb's sanctuary. I searched for the Sunrise Harbor Trust. I found the trustee company, a firm called Sterling O'Malley. I dug through public records. I found the deed to the condo, and then I found the clause that my parents had conveniently left out of their explanation. I found a summary of the trust terms on a legal filing from when Arthur's estate was probated. Clause 4. B. Limitation of offer. If no qualifying grandchild establishes residency by January 1st, 2027, the property shall be liquidated. The proceeds of the sale shall be distributed equally among the surviving nieces and nephews of Arthur Ross, with the explicit exception of Ariana Marie Ross, who is disinherited from this portion of the estate. I stared at the screen. The date, January 1st, 2027. That was 3 months away. The clock was ticking. That was why they were desperate. That was why Brielle had swooped in now. If they didn't get Caleb to Florida and prove he lived there before the deadline, the condo would be sold, and the money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, would go to Brielle and my cousins. But if Caleb lived there, the condo stayed in the family, controlled by the family guardian fate, Brielle. It wasn't just about giving Caleb a step up. It was about saving the asset for themselves. They were using my son as a key to unlock a vault. I looked at the clock. It was 4 a.m. I waited until 7. The sun came up, casting long, pale beams across the floor. I dialed Brielle. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was groggy. Hello? I know about the trust, I said. There was a silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence. I know about the condo. I continued, my voice steady, cold. I know about the residency requirement. I know that you and Mom and Dad concocted this entire trip to trap him there so you could claim the property before the deadline. Brielle sighed. It sounded like a sound of relief, not guilt. Okay, she said. Okay, that makes this easier. Easier? I screamed. You kidnapped my child for a condo. It is not just for the condo. Ari, she said, her voice shifting into that reasonable, patronizing tone that drove me mad. It is for him. Do you have any idea how much that place is worth? It is beachfront. It is his birthright. Dad said if we didn't act now, it would be gone forever. So you lied to me? You manipulated me? We didn't think you would understand. She said, you are so rigid. You would have said no out of principle, and you would have cost Caleb a fortune. We had to get him here first. We had to show you how happy he could be. Bring him home, I said, today, or I'm calling the FBI. Ari, stop, she said. You are not calling the FBI. We have already started the process. What process? We met with a family attorney down here yesterday, she said casually, just to explore the options. We filed some preliminary paperwork for a temporary guardianship, just to make things easier paperwork-wise for the school enrollment and the trust. It is just a formality. Guardianship? I felt the room spin. You filed for guardianship of my son? It is temporary, she insisted. Just for the 6 months. You would still be his mom. You could visit all the time. He would still be yours, obviously. But on paper, he needs a Florida guardian to qualify for the trust. It is just a legal hoop we have to jump through. I am not consenting to that, I shouted. I will never consent to that. Well, Brielle said, and her voice hardened, losing its warmth entirely. That is the thing. Ari, the lawyer, he seems to think we have a strong case even if you don't consent. What? He asked about your life, she said, about your job, your hours, the fact that you are a single mom working high-stress shifts, the fact that you have a history of anxiety. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. What did you tell him? I told him the truth, she said, that you are overwhelmed, that you are a workaholic, that you are emotionally unpredictable, that Caleb is often left with babysitters. The lawyer said the court might agree that Caleb is better off with a stable family unit in a better environment, especially given the financial benefits. You are trying to take him, I whispered. You are actually trying to take him. I am trying to help him, she yelled back, her composure cracking. Look at your life. Ari, you are drowning. You live in a rental box. You count coupons. I can give him the world. Why can't you just let him have this? Why do you have to be so selfish? I hung up. I couldn't listen to another word. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, shaking. Panic was a physical thing, a claw in my chest. They were not just keeping him for a week. They were building a case. They were rewriting reality to make me look unfit and themselves look like saviors. I needed a lawyer. I needed to fight. But first, I needed to know what they had done. Preliminary paperwork, she had said. I sat back down at the laptop. I logged into my email. I searched for guardianship. Nothing. I searched for Florida. Hundreds of emails from airlines, hotels, spam. I searched for legal, and then I saw it. An email from 3 days ago. It was in my trash folder. I hadn't put it there. Sender. DocuSign service via lawoffice_generic. Subject. Completed. Preliminary consent for temporary guardianship. Minor. I stared at it. Completed. I opened the email. It was a notification that a document had been signed. I clicked the link to view the document. It was a PDF, Petition for Concurrent Custody by Extended Family. I scrolled down. My eyes blurred with tears, but I forced myself to look. There, on the bottom of page 4, was a signature. Ariana M. Ross. It was a digital signature, a computerized cursive font that looked nothing like my handwriting. But legally, it was valid. I looked at the timestamp. It was signed on Sunday evening, at 7:45. I thought back to Sunday evening. I had been sitting at my kitchen table, waiting for them to call. My laptop had been closed. Then I remembered. Sunday evening. My mother had called me. She had kept me on the phone for 20 minutes, yelling at me about being ungrateful. And while she had me on the phone, someone else had been logging into my account. My password. It was Caleb's birthday. Caleb 2018. My parents knew it. Everyone knew it. I looked at the IP address listed on the digital certificate at the bottom of the page. IP address 192.168.1.1. Location Crestview Hills. OH, my parents' house. They hadn't just manipulated me. They hadn't just pressured me. They had logged into my email. They had used my identity. They had forged my consent to give away my own child. I sat there, the cold light of the screen illuminating my face. The shaking stopped. The tears stopped. A cold, hard clarity settled over me. This was no longer a family dispute. This was a crime. And they had made one fatal mistake. They thought I was weak. They thought I was the anxious, overwhelmed mess they had spent 30 years telling me I was. They were about to find out exactly what a mother would do when her cub was stolen. I reached for my phone, not to call Brielle, but to search for the number of the Larkridge Police Department. But before I dialed, I looked at the document one last time. Reason for consent. Mother acknowledges inability to provide adequate financial and emotional stability due to personal hardship. The words burned into my retinas. Inability, instability, hardship. They had written my confession for me. They had turned my love into negligence. I closed the laptop lid. The snap echoed in the quiet room like a gunshot. I stood up. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red, my skin pale. I looked like a victim. I dried my face. I brushed my hair. I put on a blazer. I was not a victim. I was Ariana Ross. I was Caleb's mother. And I was going to burn their entire plan to the ground. I drove to the Larkridge Police Department with a printed copy of the DocuSign certificate in my hand. The paper damp where I had been gripping it against the steering wheel. The station was a low brick building that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee, a scent that reminded me uncomfortably of the hospital waiting rooms where I spent my days. I approached the front desk, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I need to report identity theft, I told the officer, a heavy-set man with tired eyes. Someone accessed my email and signed a legal document in my name. He slid a clipboard across the counter. Fill this out. I scribbled my information, my hand shaking so hard the letters were jagged. When I was called back to a desk, I explained everything. The trust, the condo, the forged consent form for guardianship. I showed him the IP address, the timestamp, the email notification in my trash folder. The officer, whose name badge read Sergeant Miller, looked at the papers and then back at me. "Ma'am, this document is a consent for guardianship filed in a Florida court?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "but I didn't sign it. They used my account." "That is fraud. That is forgery." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Here is the problem. It is a digital signature verified through your email account. You admit your parents know your password?" "They guessed it," I said quickly. "It is my son's birthday. But you have shared it with them before?" "Maybe once. Years ago. To check a flight. But that doesn't give them permission to give away my child." Sergeant Miller rubbed his face. "Look, I believe you are upset. But this isn't a simple case of someone stealing your credit card. This is a civil dispute involving family law in another jurisdiction. If there is a court case open in Florida, you need to challenge the validity of the signature there. We can't just arrest your parents for logging into an email you effectively gave them access to, not without a court order proving malicious intent." I stared at him. Malicious intent? They are stealing my son. "You need a lawyer, ma'am," he said gently. "A family law attorney. This is a custody battle, not a police matter." I walked out of the station feeling as though the ground had dissolved beneath my feet. The law, which I had thought was a shield, was nothing but a tangled net. I drove to the hospital because I didn't know where else to go. I swiped my badge, walked past the reception desk, and made it as far as the supply closet on the 3rd floor before my legs gave out. I sank onto a box of saline solution, pulled my knees to my chest, and let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. That was where Tessa found me 10 minutes later. "Ari?" she said, pushing the door open. Oh my God. She was on her knees next to me in a second, her hands gripping my shoulders. "What happened? Is it Caleb?" "They forged my signature." I choked out, "They filed for guardianship. The police won't help." Tessa didn't ask questions. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" She just pulled me into a fierce hug, letting me weep into her scrubs. "Okay," she said, her voice hard and capable. "Okay, get up. You are not working today. I have a shift." I started, "I don't care if the hospital burns down." She said, "You are taking a leave day. Come on." She marched me to her car, drove me to a diner down the street, and ordered me coffee and toast. Then she pulled out her phone. "We are finding you a shark," she said. "Not a nice lawyer, a shark." We spent an hour scrolling through reviews. Finally, we found a name that kept coming up. Jordan Neely, aggressive, thorough, specializes in interstate custody disputes. Tessa called his office. She used her nurse voice, the one that made doctors stop and listen. She explained the urgency. She got me an appointment for 2 o'clock that afternoon. Jordan Neely's office was in a glass building downtown. He was a man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a suit that looked like it had been tailored within an inch of its life. He listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he sat back. "Let me get this straight," he said. "Your sister took your son on a vacation, refused to return him, and then you discovered a consent form signed digitally from your parents' IP address?" "Yes." I said, "And there is a trust involved?" "Yes. The Sunrise Harbor Trust." Jordan nodded slowly. "Money creates motive. That is good for us. It proves this isn't just about the child's best interest." He opened his laptop. "I have a contact in Miami. Let me see if a petition has actually been filed." He typed for a few minutes while I stared at the abstract art on his wall, trying to breathe. "Here it is," he said. "In re. Guardianship of Caleb Ross. Filed. Monday morning. Petitioners, Brielle and Chase Miller." He turned the screen toward me. I saw the case number, the official seal, and there is an affidavit attached, Jordan said, his voice neutral. "From your sister." I leaned forward. "What does it say?" He read from the screen. "The mother, Ariana Ross, is emotionally volatile and unable to provide a stable environment. She has a history of erratic behavior, including hysterical outbursts in the presence of the minor child during her divorce proceedings in 2021. I felt my face burn. "I cried when Owen left," I shouted. "Who wouldn't cry?" Jordan held up a hand. "Let me finish. The mother frequently leaves the minor child alone at night to work irregular shifts at a hospital." "That is a lie," I said. "He is with a babysitter, Mrs. Higgins. She lives next door." "We will prove that," Jordan said calmly. "But right now, this is the narrative they have presented to the judge. They are painting you as an absentee, unstable mother to justify the emergency temporary guardianship." My phone buzzed on the desk. I looked down. It was Owen. I haven't spoken to him in months. I whispered, "Answer it," Jordan said. "Put it on speaker." I tapped the green button. "Hello? Ariana?" Owen's voice sounded confused and angry. "I just got a certified letter in the mail. From a court in Florida. It says there is a hearing about Caleb's guardianship. What the hell is going on?" I closed my eyes. They filed for it. Owen, Brielle, and my parents. They are trying to keep him there to get the condo. "The condo?" Owen asked. "What condo?" "Uncle Arthur's place. It goes to Caleb if he lives there. They forged my signature on a consent form." "Owen, they are trying to take him." There was a silence on the line. Then Owen swore, a low, harsh sound. "I knew it," he said. "I knew they were up to something. Remember when we were married? Your mother was always hinting that Caleb would be better off spending the summers with them? That we were too stressed to handle him?" "I remember," I said quietly. "I always told you they were just trying to help. They weren't helping." "Ari," Owen said, "they were undermining. They made you feel incompetent so they could swoop in, and now they are doing it for real." He paused. "The notice lists me as the father. It says I need to appear or consent. Please," I said, my voice breaking. "Please tell me you didn't know about this. I didn't know a damn thing." Owen said firmly, "I may not be the perfect dad, but I never agreed to give up my rights to your sister. And I definitely didn't agree to move my son to Florida." "Thank you," I whispered. Jordan leaned toward the phone. "Mr. Ross? This is Jordan Neely, Ariana's attorney. Are you willing to testify to that? That you never consented and that you oppose this petition?" "Absolutely," Owen said. "And I will testify that Ariana is a good mother. She is anxious, yeah, but she loves that kid more than anything. She has never neglected him. The idea that she leaves him alone is garbage. We need that on record." Jordan said, I will have my paralegal send you an affidavit within the hour. I will sign it, Owen said. Ari? Yeah? Go get him, he said. Don't let them win. I hung up, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. Owen and I had our issues, plenty of them, but in this, he was on my side. Jordan turned back to his computer. Okay, we have the father's objection. That is huge. Now, we need to nail down the forgery. He picked up his office phone. I am calling a digital forensics expert I use. We need to preserve that metadata before your parents try to wipe anything. Within an hour, a man named Kevin arrived with a laptop that looked like a military device. I gave him my email login. He worked in silence for 20 minutes while I paced the office. Here, Kevin said, pointing to a string of code. Login successful. October 11th, 7:42 p.m. IP 192.168.1.1. That is my parents' router. I said, I checked it on my phone. And look here, Kevin added. Password reset request. 7:40 p.m. They requested a reset link to your recovery email, which I am guessing is also accessible from their house? My old Yahoo account. I realized my dad set it up for me in high school. He probably still has the password. So they reset your password, logged in, signed the document via DocuSign, and then deleted the notification emails. Kevin summarized. But they missed the one in the trash folder. Amateur hour? This is it, Jordan said, a grim smile appearing on his face. This is fraud. This is perjury. He looked at me. Ariana, we have enough to blow this petition out of the water, but we have to do it in court. In Miami. I have to go there? I asked, my stomach turning. Yes, the hearing is scheduled for Friday morning. That is 2 days from now. If you don't show up, the judge might grant the temporary order by default. Assuming your absence confirms the consent document, you have to be there to look the judge in the eye and say, I did not sign that. I nodded. I will go. But first, Jordan said, closing the folder, you need to confront your parents. You need to see if they will withdraw the petition voluntarily once they know they are caught. It saves you the airfare and saves Caleb the trauma of a court battle. I stood up. I knew exactly where they were. I drove to Crestview Hills in a haze of cold fury. I did not park in the driveway this time. I parked on the street, leaving the engine running for a moment as if I might need to make a quick getaway. I walked up the cobblestone path. I did not knock. I used my key, the key they had given me for emergencies, and let myself in. They were in the living room. The television was on, blaring the evening news. My mother was knitting. My father was pouring a drink. They looked up, startled, as I stormed in. Ariana? My mother said, dropping her needles. What are you doing here? You look terrible. I stopped in the center of the Persian rug. I know what you did, I said. My voice was dangerously quiet. My father frowned. What are you talking about? I know you logged into my email on Sunday night while Mom kept me on the phone. I said, I know you reset my password. I know you forged my signature on the guardianship consent form. The room went deadly silent. My mother's face drained of color. My father set his glass down, the ice clinking loudly against the crystal. Ariana. My father started, his tone shifting to a defensive bluster. We were just helping with the paperwork. Helping? I laughed, a sharp, jagged sound. You committed a felony. You committed identity theft. We did it for you, my mother cried out. Standing up, you were so hysterical about the trip. We knew you wouldn't sign it yourself because you are too stubborn to see the bigger picture. We just wanted to expedite things so the trust wouldn't lapse. You don't get to decide that, I screamed. You don't get to decide to give away my son? He is our grandson, my father shouted back, stepping toward me. And we are trying to secure his future. You are letting your petty jealousy of Brielle ruin $1 million opportunity. Jealousy? I stared at him. You think this is about jealousy? This is about you thinking you own us. You think because you have money and I don't, that I am just an incubator for the heir you actually want. That is not true, my mother sobbed. We love you. Ariana. No, you don't, I said, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. You tolerate me. You criticize me. You undermine me. But you love Brielle. And you love Caleb. And you decided to just cut out the middleman. My father's face was purple. You are ungrateful. We have supported you. We have helped you with rent. I paid you back every cent. I yelled. Every single cent. I worked night shifts. I missed putting him to bed so I wouldn't owe you anything, and you still treat me like a child. We were protecting him, my mother insisted, wiping her eyes. From your anxiety. From your instability. I am not unstable, I roared, my voice echoing off the high ceilings. I am a mother protecting her child from a family of wolves. I pulled the printout of the IP address log from my purse and threw it onto the coffee table. My lawyer has this, I said. The police have this. If you don't call Brielle right now and tell her to withdraw that petition and put Caleb on a plane, I will prosecute you. I will send my own parents to jail. My father looked at the paper. He looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Ariana, be reasonable, he said, his voice dropping. Think about the scandal. Think about Caleb. I am thinking about Caleb, I said. That is why I am doing this. Call her, I commanded. My father picked up his phone. He dialed. He put it on speaker. Brielle answered. Hey, Dad, what's up? The jig is up. Brielle, my father said heavily. She knows. She has a lawyer. She has proof we signed the document. There was a silence on the line. Then Brielle's voice came back, cold and sharp. So? Let her prove it in court. Brielle, my mother whimpered. She is talking about jail. She is bluffing. Brielle said, She won't send you to jail. She doesn't have the guts. And even if the signature is tossed, the affidavit stands. She is unfit. We have the recordings. Mom, remember? I froze. Recordings? Ariana looked at her mother. What recordings? My mother looked away. We are going to court, Brielle said. I am not sending him back to that depressing little life. He belongs here. See you in Miami. Ari. The line clicked dead. I looked at my parents. My mother was weeping into her hands. My father was staring at the floor. You recorded me? I whispered. My mother didn't answer. I turned around and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it gently, sealing off that part of my life forever. I called Jordan from the car. They won't withdraw, I said. Brielle wants to fight. Then we fight. Jordan said, book a flight. Be in my office tomorrow morning to prep. I drove home. I booked a ticket on the first flight out on Friday morning. It cost $400, money I had been saving for Christmas. But I didn't care. I went into Caleb's room. It was cold. I sat on his bed and pulled his pillow onto my lap. It still smelled like him, a mix of shampoo and sleep. I picked up my phone. I had a voicemail from 3 weeks ago that I had saved. I played it. Hey, Mom. Just calling to say I forgot my lunchbox. Love you. Bye. I listened to it again and again. Love you. Mom. I let myself cry then. Not the hysterical sobbing of the supply closet, but a deep, mournful weeping for the family I had lost. I mourned the sister I thought I had. I mourned the parents I wished were mine. But as the tears dried, something else took their place. A cold, hard resolve. I stood up. I walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My eyes were puffy, my hair messy. I washed my face. I stood up straight. You are not small. I told my reflection. You are his mother. I went to the closet and pulled out my suit, the one I wore for interviews. I hung it on the door. I packed my carry-on bag, copies of Caleb's report cards, letters from his teachers, the affidavit from Owen, the IP address log. I put everything into a worn folder labeled Caleb. I sat on the edge of the bed in the hotel room near the airport where I had decided to stay. Not wanting to be alone in the townhouse, the room was generic, beige, impersonal. I practiced my opening statement to the empty room. My name is Ariana Ross. I am Caleb's mother. I did not consent to this. I said it louder. I did not consent. I would say it until the walls shook. I would say it until the judge heard me. I would bring my son home. Miami hit me like a physical blow the moment I stepped out of the airport terminal. The humidity was a thick, wet blanket that clung to my skin, and the air smelled of exhaust fumes and sunscreen. It was a city of aggressive beauty, vibrant and chaotic, a stark contrast to the gray, orderly streets of Larkridge. I felt like an alien species here, pale and brittle in my travel-wrinkled blazer. I took a cab to the hotel Jordan had recommended, a Holiday Inn Express, 3 miles from the courthouse. It was not the beachside resort Brielle was staying at. It was practical, affordable, and grimly efficient. I checked in, declined the front desk clerk's cheerful offer of a map to the nearest beaches, and went straight to my room. The first thing I did was open my phone. I knew I shouldn't. Jordan had warned me to stay off social media, to avoid the bait, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to see him. Brielle's Instagram story was fresh, posted only 20 minutes ago. It was a video of Caleb sitting on a paddleboard in calm, glassy water. He was laughing, trying to stand up, his legs wobbling. Caption: soaking up the last rays of our beach day before reality calls. Going to miss this little guy so much when he has to go back to the cold. Anti-life making memories wish it could last. I read the comments. Jessica V. It is a crime to send him back to the frozen tundra. He looks so happy. Marcy Ross. My heart is breaking. He belongs in the sun. They were doing it in real time. Spinning the narrative. Ariana the killjoy. Ariana the one dragging him back to misery. I threw the phone onto the bed, feeling the familiar burn of shame and anger. They were making me the villain in my own son's life. I spent the afternoon meeting with Jordan and his local co-counsel, a sharp-featured woman named Elena Rodriguez, who spoke with the rapid-fire cadence of someone who spent her life arguing. We met in a conference room that overlooked the gleaming white towers of downtown Miami. Here is the lay of the land, Elena said, spreading a blueprint of the courtroom on the table. Judge Halpern is fair, but she is impatient. She hates drama. She hates theatrics. If you cry, she will think you are unstable. If you yell, she will think you are aggressive. So I have to be a robot? I asked, my voice tight. You have to be calm, Jordan corrected. You have to be the adult in the room. Brielle and your parents are going to try to provoke you. They want you to snap. They want the judge to see the hysterical mother they described in their affidavit. Do not give them that satisfaction. I nodded, gripping my hands together in my lap until the knuckles turned white. I am terrified. I admitted. I am terrified that if I look at them, I will scream. Look at me, Jordan said. Look at Elena. Do not look at them. You are just there to answer questions and tell the truth. Let the facts do the screaming. The next morning, the day before the hearing, we had a scheduled visitation. It was a concession Elena had wrung out of Brielle's lawyer, a 1-hour supervised meeting in a cafe near the courthouse. I arrived 15 minutes early. I ordered a coffee I couldn't drink. My hands were shaking so bad I had to keep them under the table. Then I saw them. Brielle walked in first, wearing a white linen dress and oversized sunglasses, looking like she owned the place, and trailing behind her, holding her hand, was Caleb. He looked different, taller, tan. His hair was bleached lighter by the sun. He was wearing a t-shirt I didn't recognize, something bright and expensive. Caleb, I called out, standing up. He looked up, saw me, and his face broke into a grin that shattered my heart. Mom! He dropped Brielle's hand and ran to me. I caught him, lifting him off the ground, burying my face in his neck. He smelled of coconut and sea salt. He felt solid and real, the only real thing in this nightmare city. I missed you, Bug, I whispered into his hair. I missed you so much. I saw a manatee, he told me, pulling back to look at me, his eyes wide, and I ate a pastry with guava in it. It was so good. That sounds amazing, I said, smoothing his hair. You have to tell me everything. I sat him down and he launched into a breathless monologue about the beach, the pool, the lizards he had seen on the sidewalk. I listened, nodding, smiling, asking questions, careful not to let a single drop of my fear bleed into the conversation. I was just mom. Safe, boring, loving mom. Brielle stood near the counter, ordering an iced latte. She watched us with a strained smile, her eyes hidden behind her dark glasses. She didn't approach. She let us have our bubble. Halfway through the hour, Caleb needed to use the bathroom. "I will take him," I said, standing up. "I will come too," Brielle said quickly, stepping forward, "just to help." We walked him to the men's room door and waited outside in the narrow hallway. The air was thick with the smell of roasting coffee and tension. Brielle took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were rimmed with red, despite the makeup. "Ari," she said, her voice low, "we don't have to do this tomorrow." I looked at her. "Do what?" "You dragged me here. We can settle," she said. "Just sign a simple agreement. Joint physical custody. Caleb stays here for the school year to establish residency for the trust. You get him summers and holidays. We split the travel costs. He gets the condo. Everyone wins." I stared at her, incredulous. "You want me to give you my son for 9 months of the year? So you can get a condo?" "It is not just the condo," she hissed. "It is his future. And it is avoiding the drama. Do you know what tomorrow is going to be like? My lawyer is going to tear you apart. He is going to bring up everything. The divorce, the therapy, the times you called mom crying because you were overwhelmed. That is low. Brielle," I said, "even for you." "I am trying to save you from yourself," she said, her voice trembling. "If you melt down in court, Ari, and you will. You always do. It will just prove you are unstable. The judge will give us temporary custody anyway. Why not do it on your own terms? Why be selfish?" I stepped closer to her. I felt a cold, hard clarity settle over me. "I am not selfish." I said, "I am his mother. And tomorrow, I am going to show the judge exactly who is unstable." The bathroom door opened and Caleb bounced out, shaking his wet hands. "Ready for more pastry?" he asked. I smiled at him, turning my back on my sister. "Let's get you a chocolate one." The courtroom was freezing. It was a stark, wood-paneled room that smelled of furniture polish and anxiety. I sat at the table on the left, flanked by Jordan and Elena. I wore my navy suit, my hair pulled back in a tight bun. I felt physically small, like a child who had snuck into an adult's office. On the other side of the aisle sat the opposition. Brielle, looking tragic and elegant in a black dress. My parents, Leonard and Marcy, sitting stiffly beside her. They were supported by a man who looked like he belonged on a billboard. Tan, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. Judge Halpern swept in. She was a woman in her 60s with short gray hair and a face that brooked no nonsense. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and looked over the rim of them at the packed courtroom. "We are here for the matter of the guardianship of Caleb Ross," she said. "Petition for temporary emergency guardianship filed by Brielle and Chase Miller. Let us proceed." Brielle's lawyer, Mr. Sterling, stood up. He had a voice like poured honey. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is about the best interest of a child who has thrived in the care of his aunt and grandparents over the last week, a child who needs stability, resources, and a calm environment, things that, unfortunately, his mother has struggled to provide." He painted a picture of me that was unrecognizable. Ariana the frail, Ariana the overwhelmed, Ariana the woman who worked night shifts and left her child with strangers. And then came the evidence. "Your Honor," Mr. Sterling said, "to demonstrate the mother's emotional volatility, we would like to play a recording. This was taken 2 years ago, during a period when the mother was relying heavily on the grandmother for support. My mother looked down at her hands. The audio played over the courtroom speakers. It was scratchy, filled with the clinking of glasses. Ariana's voice. I can't do it all. Mom, I am so tired. Sometimes I wish someone would just take over for a year so I can sleep. Just turn off the noise." Then, A laugh. A bitter, exhausted laugh. Marcy's voice. "Oh, honey, we are here. We can help." The recording stopped. "Mister?" Sterling looked at the judge, a mother who wishes to turn off the noise of her own child. A mother who fantasizes about abandoning her responsibilities. This is not a woman equipped for full custody. I felt the blood drain from my face. That conversation. It had been a wine night. I had been venting after a week of double shifts and Caleb having the flu. It was a moment of weakness, shared in confidence with my own mother, and she had recorded it. I looked at Jordan. He squeezed my arm under the table. "Breathe," he mouthed. I stood up when it was my turn to testify. My legs felt like jelly. "Ms. Ross," Mr. Sterling asked, approaching the stand. "Is that your voice on the recording?" "Yes," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "And did you say you wanted someone to take over raising your son?" I said I was tired. I clarified. It was a figure of speech. Every parent is tired sometimes. "But you rely on your parents for money? For rent?" "I borrowed money for a deposit 3 years ago." I said, my voice gaining a little strength. "I paid it back. I have the bank records. Mister?" Sterling smiled condescendingly. "Of course. But the fact remains. You are a single mother in a high-stress job. You have admitted to anxiety. Why deny your son the opportunity to live in a stable, 2-parent household with ample resources?" "Because he has a home," I said, looking directly at the judge. "With me." "Mister?" Sterling sat down, looking satisfied. He thought he had won. He thought he had broken me. Then Jordan stood up. "Your Honor," he said, "we have heard a lot about the petitioner's concern for the child, but I would like to address the foundation of this petition, specifically, the consent form labeled Exhibit A." He walked to the podium. "The petitioners claim that Ms. Ross consented to this guardianship electronically on Sunday evening. However, we have a report from a digital forensics expert regarding the signature on that document." Jordan handed a thick packet to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. "As you can see on page 3, the IP address from which the document was signed is located in Crestview Hills, Ohio, the residence of Leonard and Marcy Ross. Furthermore, the log shows a password reset request for Ms. Ross's email account originated from that same IP address 2 minutes prior to the signing." Judge Halpern flipped through the pages. Her eyebrows went up. "Mr. Neely," she said, "are you suggesting the mother did not sign this?" "I am suggesting, Your Honor, that the mother's account was hacked, her identity stolen, and her signature forged by the very people sitting across the aisle." The courtroom went silent. My father shifted in his seat. My mother looked pale. Brielle stared straight ahead. Her jaw clenched. Judge Halpern looked at Brielle's lawyer. "Mr. Sterling? Do you have an explanation for this?" Mr. Sterling looked flustered for the first time. "Your Honor, my clients. They were assisting the mother. She was unavailable." "Assisting her by resetting her password without her knowledge?" Judge Halpern asked, her voice dropping to a dangerous chill. "That is a very creative definition of assistance." Jordan wasn't finished. "We also have testimony from the father, Mr. Owen Ross. Joining via video link, the screen on the wall flickered to life. Owen was sitting in his kitchen, looking serious and angry. "Mr. Ross," Jordan asked, "did you consent to this guardianship?" "Absolutely not," Owen said, his voice booming through the speakers. "And neither did Ariana. She is a great mom. The Ross family has been trying to undermine her for years. They tried to do the same thing to me when we were married. Make us feel like we weren't good enough so they could take over. This is a pattern." Owen looked directly at the camera. "I never agreed to move my son to Florida. This is a kidnapping dressed up as a lawsuit." Judge Halpern nodded slowly. She looked at the petitioner's table. Her gaze was no longer neutral. "It was predatory. Is there anything else, Mr. Neely?" she asked. "Just one thing, Your Honor." Jordan pulled a document from his briefcase. In the discovery phase, which was rushed due to the emergency nature of this hearing, we received a file from the petitioner's previous counsel regarding estate planning. He held up a piece of paper. This is a draft of an insurance policy application. It names Brielle Miller as the sole beneficiary and guardian of Caleb Ross in the event of Ariana Ross's death or incapacity. He paused. It was dated 2 weeks ago, the same day the trip was booked. The courtroom gasped, a collective intake of breath. Judge Halpern leaned forward. "Let me see that." She took the document. She read it. Then she lowered it and looked directly at Brielle. "Mrs. Miller," she said. "Stand up." Brielle stood up slowly. She looked smaller now. Her confidence was fraying at the edges. "Why was this document created?" Judge Halpern asked. "Were you planning for your sister's sudden demise?" "No!" Brielle cried, her voice cracking. "No, Your Honor. It was just standard planning. The lawyer said if we were going to be guardians, we needed to be prepared for worst-case scenarios." "Worst-case scenarios?" Judge Halpern repeated. "You take a child on a 4-day vacation, and suddenly you are insuring yourself against his mother's death? That suggests a level of premeditation that is frankly disturbing." "It wasn't me," Brielle sobbed. It was the trust. We had to show we were committed." "The trust?" Judge Halpern asked. "The Sunrise Harbor Trust," Brielle blurted out. "Dad said if we didn't get Caleb down here and established as a resident, the condo would be sold. We had to move fast." The truth spilled out. The condo, the deadline, the pressure. Judge Halpern looked at Leonard and Marcy. They were shrinking in their seats, looking everywhere but at the judge. "So this isn't about the child's stability," Judge Halpern said, her voice dripping with disdain. "It is about real estate." "No!" Brielle wailed. "I love him. I wanted to be a mother to him. I can't have my own." She broke down then. The polished facade crumbled completely. She stood there, weeping, her hands covering her face. I tried IVF 3 times. She choked out. It didn't work. And Caleb, he is so perfect. And Ari is always so tired. I thought I could help. I thought if we just kept him, everyone would be happy." She looked at me then. Her eyes were pleading, desperate. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Ari. I just wanted to be a mom." I looked at her. I saw the pain. I saw the desperation. But I also saw the forgery, the lies, the recording. I stayed silent. Judge Halpern banged her gavel. "We are taking a recess," she announced. "I have serious concerns about the credibility of the petitioners. I am going to review these documents in my chambers. And Mr. Sterling, I suggest you advise your clients that I'm considering referring this matter to the state attorney's office for investigation into fraud and forgery." "All rise." The judge swept out. I stood up. My knees were shaking, but I was upright. I walked out into the hallway. My parents were huddled with Mr. Sterling, looking terrified. Brielle was sitting on a bench, crying into a tissue. They didn't look at me. They couldn't. I walked past them. I walked to the window and looked out at the Miami skyline. The sun was shining. The palm trees were swaying. It was over. The lie was exposed. I felt a strange, hollow sensation in my chest. It was vindication. Yes, but it was also grief. I had won my son back, but I had lost my family. Jordan came up beside me. "You did good, Ariana. You stayed calm. You let them hang themselves." I nodded. "What happens now?" "Now," Jordan said, "we go back in there and we get the order, and then we take Caleb home." I closed my eyes and leaned my forehead against the cool glass. Home. It sounded like the most beautiful word in the world. The bailiff called the room to order. "All rise." Judge Halpern returned to the bench. Her robe swished around her. A black tide of authority. She did not look at her notes. She looked directly at the people sitting at the petitioner's table. The air in the courtroom had changed. Before the recess, it had been thick with the humidity of conflicting narratives. Now, it was cold and sharp, sterilized by the truth. "Please be seated," Judge Halpern said. She clasped her hands in front of her. "I have reviewed the evidence presented by Mr. Neely regarding the digital signature on the consent form, as well as the login history of Miss Ross's email account. I have also reviewed the affidavit submitted by the petitioners. She turned her gaze to my father. Leonard Ross sat stiffly, his face a mask of indignation that was slowly cracking to reveal the panic beneath. "Mr. Ross," the judge said, "stand up, please." My father stood. He adjusted his tie, but his hands were trembling. "You are a retired accountant, is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," my father said. His voice was raspy. "So you understand the concept of authorization? You understand that signing a document on behalf of another person without their express legal power of attorney is fraud?" My father cleared his throat. "Your Honor, it was a family misunderstanding. We were acting under the assumption that Ariana, that my daughter, wanted what was best for her son. We were facilitating the process. We have always helped her with her paperwork. She gets overwhelmed." Judge Halpern's eyes narrowed. "Facilitating? You accessed her private email account. You reset her password. You signed a legal document surrendering her custodial rights. That is not facilitation. Mr. Ross, that is identity theft. Did you or did you not physically click the button to sign that document?" My father looked at his lawyer. "Mr. Sterling." Mr. Sterling stared at the table, refusing to make eye contact. He knew a sinking ship when he saw one. I may have clicked it," my father stammered, "but only because time was of the essence. The trust. Judge Halpern interrupted. "Yes, the condo. Let the record show that the witness admits to the act. Sit down. Mr. Ross." My father sank into his chair. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him, the giant who had dominated my childhood, whose voice could make the walls of our house shake, was just an old man caught in a lie. "Mrs. Ross," the judge said. My mother stood up slowly. She was clutching a tissue in her hand, twisting it into a tight white rope. "I see here that the password reset request was sent to a recovery email address, a Yahoo account. Do you have access to that account?" My mother burst into tears. It was instantaneous. A flood of weeping that usually made everyone in the room rush to comfort her. "I don't know about computers," she wailed. "I barely understand how to turn the iPad on. Leonard handles all the technical things. I just wanted Caleb to be safe." Judge Halpern was unmoved. "Mrs. Ross, the IP logs show that the confirmation email was opened on an iPhone registered to a Marcy Ross. That is you, is it not?" I don't remember," my mother sobbed. "It was so chaotic. We were just trying to help Ariana. She is so unstable. Your Honor, you heard the recording. She can't handle him." Judge Halpern slammed her gavel down. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Stop," she commanded. "Stop trying to assassinate your daughter's character to cover your own crimes. I have heard the recording. I have also heard a mother who loves her son enough to fly to a different state on 24 hours' notice to fight for him." The judge shuffled the papers on her desk into a neat stack. "I am ready to rule." The room went deadly silent. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. I could hear the rapid beating of my own heart. "The petition for temporary emergency guardianship is denied in full," Judge Halpern stated, her voice ringing out clear and final. I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. Jordan squeezed my arm. "Furthermore," she continued, "Ms. Ariana Ross retains sole physical custody of the minor child, Caleb Ross. As stipulated in her original divorce decree, the petitioners, Brielle and Chase Miller, are ordered to surrender the child to the mother immediately following this hearing." She looked over her glasses at my parents. "Regarding the grandparents, Leonard and Marcy Ross, effective immediately. Any and all visitation rights are suspended and will be reinstated solely at the discretion of the mother. You have forfeited your right to be presumed safe guardians." My mother let out a gasp. My father's face turned a deep, bruised purple. "And finally," Judge Halpern said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming grave, "regarding the Sunrise Harbor Trust, I am issuing a court order to freeze any transfer of assets or changes to the trust beneficiaries pending a review by an independent trustee. And regarding the forged consent form," she paused, letting the weight of the moment settle on them. I am forwarding the evidence of digital forgery, identity theft, and the unauthorized recording of private conversations to the state attorney's office for review. You may very well be facing criminal charges. I suggest you keep your expensive lawyer on retainer. You are going to need him. Case closed. The gavel banged one last time. Judge Halpern stood up and swept out of the room. I sat there, stunned. It was over. I had won. I had gotten everything I wanted. Caleb was mine. They couldn't take him. But I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel the surge of joy I had expected. I looked across the aisle. My mother was sobbing into my father's shoulder. My father was arguing in a hushed whisper with Mr. Sterling. Brielle was sitting alone at the end of the table, staring at her hands, completely still. I felt hollow. A vast, echoing emptiness opened up inside my chest. They had been willing to do this. That was the reality I had to live with now. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It wasn't just them being pushy. They had been willing to commit a crime, to frame me as unfit, to steal my son, all for a piece of real estate and a sense of control. The illusion was shattered. The story I had told myself for 33 years, that my family was difficult but loving, that they meant well, was gone. It lay in pieces on the courtroom floor. "Ariana?" Jordan said gently. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. "I am okay. Let's go get your boy," he said. We walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was flooded with sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was blinding after the dim artificial light of the hearing. I thanked Jordan and Elena. I shook their hands. They told me to wait by the benches while they went to finalize the release paperwork with Brielle's lawyer. I stood by the window, looking out at the palm trees. I felt like a survivor of a shipwreck who had washed up on shore, alive but possessing nothing. "Ari," I turned. Brielle was standing there. She was alone. Our parents were nowhere in sight, likely hiding in a conference room to avoid the shame of walking past me. Brielle looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen. Her makeup streaked. The glamorous, golden sister was gone. In her place was a woman who looked frightened and very tired. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was small, a whisper that barely carried over the noise of the hallway. I waited. "I know you don't believe me," she continued, hugging her arms around her waist. "But I didn't think it would go this far. I let Dad handle the lawyer. I let Mom handle the email. I wanted it to be true." "You wanted what to be true?" I asked, my voice flat. "That I was unfit? That I was a bad mother?" "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. That you wouldn't mind." I stared at her. "That I wouldn't mind you taking my son? That you were strong enough to handle it?" She said, tears spilling over again. "You have always been the strong one, Ari. Even when we were kids, Mom and Dad rode you so hard, and you just took it. You always figured it out. I thought you would be mad for a while, but then you would see the logic. You would see the condo and the school, and you would just adjust. Because that is what you do. You adjust." I felt a flash of anger so hot it made my vision blur. "I adjust because I have to." I said, "Not because I want to." "I know," she sobbed. "I know that now. But I was so desperate, Ari." We did 3 rounds of IVF. 3? The last one failed 2 months ago. The doctor said my eggs are just not viable. She looked at me, her eyes pleading for sympathy. "I felt so empty," she whispered. "And then I saw Caleb. And he is so perfect. And he looks a little like me. And you seemed so tired. I thought sharing him would fix everything. I thought I could be his mom too. And you could get a break. And we would keep the money in the family." It made so much sense in my head. I listened to her. I heard the pain in her voice, the raw, gaping wound of her infertility. And a part of me, the sister part, the part that had shared a bunk bed with her, wanted to hug her, wanted to tell her it was okay. But I looked at her hands, the hands that had held my son while she lied to me, the hands that had signed an affidavit calling me emotionally volatile. I stepped back. I am sorry you are hurting. Brielle, I said, I really am. I can't imagine what that feels like. Thank you, she breathed, taking a step toward me. But, I said, holding up a hand to stop her, that does not give you the right to steal my child. She froze. You crossed a line. Brielle, I said, you and Mom and Dad, you didn't just cross it. You erased it. You forged my signature. You recorded me in my own home. You tried to gaslight a court of law into taking my son away. I know. She wept. I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. I said, I took a deep breath. I needed to say this. I needed to say it clearly. Here is how it is going to be. I said, I am taking Caleb home today. You are not coming with us. You are not visiting. Ari, please. No unsupervised trips. I continued, my voice gaining strength. No surprise pickups from school. No FaceTimes unless I schedule them. And if I ever find out that you or Mom or Dad have tried to make a legal decision for him again, I will press those criminal charges so fast your head will spin. I understand, she whispered. I hope you do, I said, because I am done adjusting. I am done being the one who makes room for everyone else's dysfunction. I am his mother, and I am the only one who protects him. I looked at her one last time. She looked small and pathetic, standing there in her expensive dress. Goodbye. Brielle, I said. I turned around and walked away. I walked down the long marble hallway toward the elevators where Jordan was waiting with the paperwork. I didn't look back. I could hear her crying behind me. A soft, broken sound. But I didn't stop. For the first time in my life, I didn't turn back to fix it. The return to Larkridge was quiet. We flew coach. We took a cab to the townhouse. We walked through the front door, and the smell of our home, old books, laundry detergent, and the faint scent of toast hit me like a warm embrace. It is cold here, Caleb said, shivering as he dropped his backpack on the floor. It is, I agreed, turning up the thermostat, but it is home. The next few weeks were a blur of readjustment. I went back to work. Caleb went back to school. But everything was different. The phone didn't ring on Sunday nights. There were no demands for dinner at Crestview Hills. My parents were silent, presumably dealing with their own legal fallout and the humiliation of the judge's ruling. The silence should have been lonely, but it wasn't. It was peaceful. It was a heavy, rich peace that I wrapped around myself like a quilt. I started seeing a therapist, a woman named Dr. Evans who specialized in family trauma. I learned words for what had happened to me. Enmeshment, the way my parents had no boundaries between their wants and my life. Parentification, the way I had been expected to manage their emotions and expectations since I was a child. Gaslighting, the way they had made me question my own reality. Calling me unstable whenever I tried to assert myself. It was hard work. There were days I cried until my eyes burned. There were days I wanted to call my mother just to hear her voice, even if she was criticizing me. But I didn't. One evening, about a month after we got back, I sat Caleb down at the kitchen table. He was eating macaroni and cheese, his legs swinging back and forth. He had asked a few times why we weren't seeing Grandma and Grandpa, or Aunt Brielle. I had dodged the questions, distracted him with toys. But I knew I couldn't lie to him. Lying was what they did. Caleb, I said, we need to talk about why we aren't visiting the family for a while. He stopped eating. Is it because I didn't come back when I was supposed to? He asked. My heart broke. No, baby, I said quickly. No, you did nothing wrong. You were perfect. Then why? I took a breath. I tried to find the words that were true but safe. You know how sometimes, on the playground, a friend might try to make you do something you don't want to do, and they might not listen when you say stop? He nodded. Like when Jason tried to make me trade my Charizard card. Exactly. I said, well, Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Brielle, they made some plans for you without asking me, and they tried to make those plans happen even when I said stop. Oh, he said, his brow furrowing. That is not following the rules. No, it isn't. I said, My job is to keep you safe, and part of keeping you safe is making sure that people listen to our rules. So, we are taking a break from them for a little while, until they learn to listen better." He thought about this. He poked a forkful of macaroni. "Do they still love me?" he asked. "Yes," I said firmly. "They love you very much, but people can love you and still make big mistakes, and it is okay to love people and still have boundaries with them." He chewed slowly. "Boundaries. That is like a fence, right?" "Yes," I smiled. "Like a fence. To keep the good stuff in and the bad stuff out." He swallowed. "Okay. As long as we are staying here. We are staying here, right? We aren't going to move to Florida?" I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. "We are staying right here." I promised. "Just you and me." "Good," he said. "I like it here. My Legos are here." A week later, on a Saturday afternoon, the weather warmed up unexpectedly. It was one of those rare Indian summer days in late October where the sun remembered it had strength. "Get your shoes on," I told Caleb. "We are going on an adventure." We drove 40 minutes to Lake Cowan. It was a man-made lake with a small strip of imported sand that pretended to be a beach. The water was dark and cold, nothing like the turquoise brilliance of Miami. We spread out a towel on the gritty sand. We were the only ones there. Bundled up in hoodies, we ate ice cream cones from the concession stand that was about to close for the season. Caleb ran down to the water's edge. He dipped his toe in and shrieked. "It is freezing!" he yelled. Running back to me, I laughed. "It is Ohio, Bug. It is always freezing." He sat down next to me, shivering dramatically, leaning his head against my shoulder. "It is not as cool as Miami," he said, looking at the brown water. "No," I admitted, "it isn't, but the ice cream is better," he decided, licking a drip of chocolate from his thumb. "And you are here." I pulled him close, wrapping my arm around him. I looked out at the water. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't wealthy. There was no condo waiting for us. There was no trust fund. But there was no fear, either. There was no one plotting behind my back. There was no one checking my IP address or judging my bank account. I realized then that I couldn't give him the world. I couldn't give him the ocean and the private school and the sailing team. But I could give him this. I could give him a mother who was present, a mother who was honest, a life that was peaceful, and that had to be enough. "It is better." I whispered into his hair. "It is much better." Time moved on. The leaves fell, the snow came, and then the snow melted. 6 months later, we stood in line at Larkridge Regional Airport again. This time, I was holding the boarding passes. We were going to Myrtle Beach for 4 days. It wasn't Miami. We were staying in a budget motel with a kitchenette. But we were going. Caleb was wearing his backpack, holding a new Transformer toy. "I hope the hotel has a pool," he said. "It does," I said, "and a waffle maker." "Yes," he hissed, pumping his fist. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen lit up. Incoming call. Mom. I stared at it. My heart did a little flip. That old, conditioned reflex of panic. Answer it. Fix it. Don't make her mad. I looked at Caleb. He was watching the baggage carousel spin, completely unbothered, safe in his world. I looked back at the phone. It kept ringing. I didn't decline it. I didn't block it. I just let it ring. I pressed the side button to silence the vibration. I slid the phone back into my pocket. "Aren't you going to answer?" Caleb asked, noticing the movement. "Not right now," I said calmly. "We are on vacation." I took his hand. We stepped forward as the line moved. Later, when we were settled in the hotel room, watching the ocean from our small balcony, I would open my messages. I would draft a text. "Hi, Mom. We are away for a few days. When we get back, we can talk about maybe arranging a short visit with Caleb. Lunch, 1 hour. I will let you know when I'm ready." I wouldn't send it yet. I would save it as a draft. I would send it when I was ready. Maybe next week. Maybe next month. The control was mine now. The fence was built. I looked at my son, who was already trying to assemble his transformer on the bedspread. Look at the ocean. Caleb, I said, pointing to the horizon where the gray water met the gray sky. He looked up and grinned. It is big, he said. It is, I agreed, and it is all ours. Thank you so much for listening to Ariana's story. It was a journey of finding strength in the most unlikely places and standing up to the people who are supposed to protect us, but end up hurting us the most. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please drop your city or country in the comments below. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of betrayal, resilience, and justice, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And finally, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Ariana should ever let her parents back into Caleb's life? Or is the fence she built the only way to stay safe? Let me know your opinion in the comments in English. Until next time, stay safe and stand your ground.